Hey guys, it's Mike G back here with Logical Raptors Fanatic. And I just want to say all the support and likes and comments and all that stuff has been great. I just want to I got some advice from two creators and I want to shout them out now. 241. He does these edited stories with clips, and he's really good at putting together a great narrative through time as well. I think he's pretty good. If you haven't subscribed, subscribe. And we have Top Line Sports, formerly known as Chris's Sports Corner. He's got like a family kind of style sports channel. Like his wife's involved. I want to thank Mrs. Sports Corner for the sub as well. They're both great people. If you just want to chat, they listen. They're kind of into the same mindset as me, like everyone growing together and stuff. So it's a great place to kind of hang out during games and stuff. I know there's a couple different live streams, but today I think I wanted to kind of go over something. So we did the off-season review kind of in the last video, and now I think is a really great point to kind of go into this subject and kind of like we talked about trades, development, salary, all types of roster building, team building, you know what I mean? All that type of stuff. But what's the aim of what's the point of all of it, right? It's not just to solve these little problems. There's a bigger goal in mind, right? And I think zooming back out and reflecting on the bigger progression of the thing because every year you're not aiming to win a championship, not in these early stages. You're trying to build up the pieces to be able to compete for a championship one day, right? So I think when I look at seasons, I think opening day for me is kind of like the end of last season where the playoffs, whatever happens, happen, the summer workout, like the draft, all that kind of stuff that was from last year, right? And now we're kind of going into the next season where it starts. All the narratives and all everything from last year kind of fades away and we start. Every team 0-0, everyone's tied. The only point in the season where that's like the case, right? So I think it's important to kind of put things in context. And so there's a point between the end and the beginning where an ending is a new beginning, right? So that's where I want to kind of set off from. Like, all these players can work on skills individually, but them together is a team, right? And chemistry and all those kind of things, timeline wise. And I think a team's timeline, like the window for contention, is different and has its own development timeline. So let's explore what I call a mirror point, kind of interesting kind of term I'm going to start to use here. It's to describe a moment in similar ways, almost the same moment, but different players, different, a couple things are here and there shuffled around, right? But ultimately, you're in a similar phase that you were before, but you're looking to learn from before. So let's look back and learn from before. So enjoy. All right, before we start, I want to lay down the reality of requirements of winning. Like the preseason's different. I know everyone's getting up in arms about our starting lineup, but I think everyone needs to keep in context that it's a longer game and there are different requirements for each season. So preseason, regular season. and postseason, right? There's 3 seasons. In preseason, to win games, you pretty much have your main group of guys fully in rhythm, fully like everyone's not been off, kind of load managing, aka Fred, but he's important for later on in the postseason. So we're keeping that everything in mind, and we need to be mindful of different pitfalls, right? So the preseason, we'll get back to it. The deep bench, how good are those pieces of talent, right? So if you're like a bottom feeding kind of nowhere team that's kind of bottom of the league looking for the highest draft pick or whatever, you're gonna play your younger guys more because it's about experience, not necessarily like winning. So obviously there is a little hiccup against Houston, but I think it's always good to keep in perspective that most preseasons we haven't like won every game and stuff. So the preseason doesn't really dictate the regular season or the postseason because I think those are different requirements. I think the preseason is more for rhythm gathering, getting to spots, and starting to figure out expanded roles. Everyone's come back with a whole bunch of new tools and stuff. Nick's probably been looking at what they're developing and writing plays, doing different things, looking at different options, right? So they're playing with a lot of different things. So I think it's really key to not get stuck in one singular moment. And like I said, zoom out and let's look at this next mirror point. But first, the regular season, obviously, I think what gets a higher seed is better depth, right? Those are the guys, like, so you spread your talent out from, let's say, whatever, 6 to 15, right? You're spreading out your talent so you can ensure a higher seed and guarantee playoffs, right? For your younger group, your younger starting five or core or whatever you want to call it, is usually how it goes. Like I'm just giving an example right now, but this is just how like I'm trying to explain it. Sorry. But so depth is key there. But when you move to the playoffs, right? It's about those top 8 or 9 talent and how good they are. So it's almost like the opposite. Instead of stretching out the talent because there's injuries during the season and stuff, and you need people to fill in, and the better those fill in people are, the higher seed is going to be, right? So in the postseason where you don't play those guys and you're looking to tighten your rotation, your top 9 or 8 guys needs to be without like holes. They can't be like someone that can be abused on one side of the ball or one aspect of the ball, right? Or else it's going to kind of demean the whole team in a sense. So there are different requirements in each season, and I think we need to keep that in mind. And so when Masai makes certain moves, I think those are signal flares to what type of team he thinks we have, right? And everyone's been saying deep playoff run this year. And I think those are the honest expectations from Masai. But we need to understand the balance, right? There's balance in the roster, and there still needs to be balance going forward because we're still growing, right? So what is that balance? So that balance, it's about balancing those needs and shoring up your weaknesses, right? And when you see a point of a group of talent where it hits a certain point and they move through their first breakthrough, right? So we just made the playoffs again after going through a down year in Tampa, which I'll call like the reset year. So then we're on the first year of the road back to the championship. And I think that's important to see. So right here, all of the years up on the road to the championship. So Masai's first year to the championship, right? So a bunch of different things happening within those years. I'm not going to go too deep into the actual seasons. I want to talk about the mirror point and the moves made within those mirror points. So it's important we understand the way reality works, where you get figured out and have to evolve the varying supporting pieces and make it so to push the team over the top while loading the starters with prime talent, right? So prime talent like Van Vliet and Siakam, right? And and it's still about getting a decent seed. You can see that trend often where a team has to have several breakthroughs to get in the place to actually win a championship, right? So there's roads. It's like a roller coaster. It's not all up, 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 and you win, right? We obviously saw what happened to the Knicks. They made the playoffs and then kind of fell back to the lottery. The Hawks kind of made the Eastern Conference Finals and then flung back and got drummied in the first round. So it's you got to figure it out. Once you have that breakthrough, teams kind of solve what you're doing. So you need to vary up. You have to change up what you're doing, right? And adding different pieces can give you that ability to change up your different sets or different plays, how you run, right? So those pieces really matter in the end when it comes to that 8-9 rotation in the playoffs. And I think what we've been talking about, like deep playoff run, that kind of matters, right? So I think there's been key signals sent by Masai, and we're looking to have that second breakthrough without that back step, right? So I think it's really important now. Let's get into the year, I feel, is the reflection of the breakthrough we need to make, right? That year is obviously 2013, 2014, where a lot of things happened. It's Masai's first year, so it's almost like a reset, like Tampa, right? And like, because before we weren't that good, and let's put Tampa into context with the year before Masai. So that was the first year Lowry came. We were still had Jose Calderon, so Calderon was starting like half the year, and then got traded, right? So then Lowry kind of stepped up into that role, and this was his first full year kind of at the helm of our team. So I think it's important to kind of maybe tie him and Van Vliet together because I think there's a really unique kind of mirrorness to both them as a player. So I think we'll expand out from that point, but there are a lot of similarities we'll get into, right? But I think it's important that we keep everything in context of this is now and this was before, right? So it's not going to roll out the exact same. There's going to be changes and a whole different things. But I want to kind of examine the kind of point where our talent was at a similar place than it is right now. So let's continue on here. So obviously I got a bunch of notes here for our 13-14 season. And I just want to like summarize the season, make some connections to last season, 2021, 2022 season. And we went through some of this year's events in the trade tree video, like so Masai coming, the Lowry, like do you want to be a $10 million player conversation. But let's go into some other things. So, DeRozan, first time All Star, which I think Siakam's a little like 3 years older than DeMar was. compared to Lowry. So I think when we say first time All Star, it's okay to kind of put Fred into that first time All Star and kind of have that continue. And so then we have Lowry as the full-time guy with the keys, because we talked about the whole Jose Calderon trade the year before, and then the first year with Masai. So basically similar to the first year back in Toronto, right? And we went, we won 48 games and lost 34, which is decent. Like, so we're about the same kind of wins, right? But I think this season was interesting because I think I'm going to tie another thread. Obviously, in my trade tree video, we went through the Rudy Gay trade and the reason why we made the Rudy Gay trade, because Masai made that speech at the beginning of the year, like the fans are so supportive and like we need to start building a winning culture here and we need to start progressing towards something. And I think when you look at Rudy Gay, maybe didn't have the right team mindset and maybe he was more player friendly versus coach friendly and system friendly. So I think Masai kind of wanted to send a signal, hey, if you're not going to be on board with us, you're probably going to leave. And Lowry almost got traded too. So they were kind of both probably a little bit hard-headed in a sense. But I think Lowry turned himself around and really showed this year he had an ability to play the point guard position and really start to really lead this team in the right direction. And I think obviously Van Vliet kind of showed a similar kind of character in a sense. His first full year as the guy with the keys, the point guard, the leader of the team. And we were able to kind of make the playoffs again. So it's interesting. We had a bigger playoff gap, obviously, in 2013-14, and first playoffs since 2007, 2008, with the team of wow. Okay, this is a wow blast from the past. T.J. Ford, Anthony Parker, Jario Moon. Oh, geez. Andreas Bargnani, which was Masai's first move coming here in the summer of 2013 in trading Bargnani. And there's an interesting little tree that's happened off Bargnani, which I might go into. Yeah. See, there's a bunch of different trade tree videos, but I want to kind of set certain things that can continue forward after too. So I'm still in the process of thinking about which series I want to drop in what order and stuff. And still, we're still trying to build up that kind of knowledge base so we can talk about more complex subjects and kind of go deeper into things. So, Chris Bosch, obviously, that was 2 years before he left because he was injured the last couple years, I think. And then we didn't really make it. But Jose Calderon, he was actually from that playoffs almost to the next series of playoffs, which obviously you can see is about 6 years. Jason Campozo, and we have Carlos Delfino. So some blast from the past players. I remember um, kind of highlights from each of these guys, but I think it's not too important because it's not the Messiah era. So I think a lot of the connections aren't carried over because Masai's always run his organization in a certain way, and we can look back at the process because he is a process guy, system guy. He learns through mistakes. He believes in the stuff that the players do and everyone does. Everyone believes in everything the same. And that's the whole point. Everyone's on the same page. We're looking to win. And the ultimate goal is to win a championship. So obviously, we lost to Dwight Howard's Magic in game 5 in the 2007, 2008 playoffs, which is disappointing. But we're on a new point, a new kind of roller coaster. That was kind of the end of the last one. And we went into like kind of a reset period. And Masai kind of came and awakened us from that reset period. Just like coming back to Toronto awakened us from the Tampa reset period, right? So you can see we have a lot of guys on the beginning roster, which Rudy Gay wasn't there at the end. We talked about that. Quincy AC went in the trade too. So like I think we'll just stick to more of the playoff roster because I think that was more of an indication of how the team was doing statistically because there was such a big change early on in the season. So if we look here, we obviously broke into 7 games, so they all played 7 games, kind of. Well, the guys, like I said, 1 to 7, pretty much, and then we were using like an 8, 9, and looking for another guy to kind of get in there. But so, and then we had 5 of the guys start every game. So we had DeMar DeRozan starting, we had Kyle Lowry starting, and we had Terrence Ross at small forward, Armani Johnson at power forward, and Jonas Valentunis at center. And you can check the ages. So DeMar was 24, Kyle Lowry is 27. And so we were talking about the two top talent right now. They're 27. So Pascal's 27 and Van Vliet's 27. So, and then we have a couple of different other guys, like younger guys you can see here, like Jonas, a new center. Similar maybe to Scotty Barnes, a high pick, right? Big expectations. We picked up Patrick Patterson in the trade, right? With the Kings, which we went through in the trade tree video, right? 24 still has potential like an OG kind of, all right? So you can see the kind of age grouping he started to compile. So we have Grievous Vasquez, like kind of like a bench vet. So someone that can kind of like Thaddeus Young things. And then we have Terrence Ross, another 22-year-old, so similar to like Precious. He was starting, so maybe Scotty caliber starting, but it's similar, right? You can see the through line with the ages, right? But this is where the bottom end was kind of a lot older and wasn't as great, and I think that kind of played into everything, right? So if we go into the stats right now, we can see DeMar played 40 minutes per game. Lowry played 38.8 minutes a game. So our two guys played a lot of minutes, right? A lot of minutes. And DeMar averaged 23.9, so about 24. And Kyle averaged about 21. So decent numbers, not too bad, I guess, at that point, right? They're still kind of younger, 27, 24. Let's see the rebounds here. So, okay, 4 each, not bad. Kyle Lowry probably should add more assists, but I think probably DeRozan and him were swapping back and forth, right? So, obviously, they have a combined assist total there. It's interesting. DeMar was getting more steals at that point, and kind of Kyle Lowry. They were close, right? They're close, and DeMar had a couple, well, a smidgen of a block there. So it's interesting, right? And I think if you look at like turnovers, they kind of had the same turnovers. So Lowry had a couple more assists, and and had a couple more turnovers, right? So that's normal, right? If we look at the averages, we had Kyle Lowry shooting great from three, and DeMar was actually shooting but from three. But wait a minute. In stats, you need to always check volume, right? So we go over to check 3 points made and attempts. Boom. So he only actually attempted 18 threes and sunk 16, whereas Kyle Lowry attempted 43 and made 17. So obviously his percentage is way better, right? And then free throws, yeah, yeah, that's all good. So interesting, right? So let's look at the next two guys, our two forwards, our main forwards here, Amir Johnson and Jonas Valentunis. So young Jonas played 28.6 minutes, and Amir played 27.3, right? So they played probably a step down from what they did, right? And it shows kind of 10 less points, 10 less minutes, more rebounds because they're forwards, right? So Amir at 6 and Jonas almost at 10. Not too many assists, not too many. Well, Amir had like a, a, a half a steal, I guess, and then the blocks obviously higher, right? So that all those look normal, but then we go to the three pointers and we're like, whoa, okay. So 0 and nothing. So Amir attempted two threes. So that's clearly an issue in our roster, right? Wow. But if we go down to the next guy, ooh, okay, we got two good 3-point percentages. They played a bunch of minutes. Okay. They actually scored a couple points. Okay, looking good, right? We had total assists or total rebounds here, and Patrick Patterson obviously had a couple more rebounds than Gravis Vasquez, obviously. But Gravis Vasquez had more assists than Patrick Patterson. So that's interesting that Gravis Vasquez had more assists than even Kyle Lowry. So we're kind of seeing maybe why that trade happened later, but we'll continue on. So we have here like half a steal for each, kind of, we'll say that, and then half a block for Patrick Patterson. But we were looking at the 3-point percentages before, so we'll look at them and then go to volume and see that, okay, 7 and 10 made and 18 and 27 attempted. So you can see it wasn't too high, but they still kind of were able to perform. And so I think that that proved kind of what Masai was doing with that trade, sending out Rudy Gay for Grievous Vasquez, Patrick Patterson, Chuck Hayes, and John Salmons. Interesting about John Salmons. We'll put a pin in him for a second, but you can see the roster. Terrence Ross didn't shoot very well at all. Got a bunch of minutes. He was young, so I think they were playing him. And these other guys, I think, more just fill in pieces. But I don't need to really go into them, or else this video will take forever, right? So we took them to 7. Paul Pierce gave it to us in game 7 and stuff. So let's continue on to the next point. All right, so now we're in the off season, right? And the 2014 off season. So we make a couple changes here. And actually, interesting enough, this is part of the Rudy Gay to OG and Gary Trent trade tree, but I didn't want to make that any longer, so I kind of cut this part out. But John Salmons was traded for Lou Williams and the rights to Lucas Noriega. And I think I didn't want to like I took that part out because it was a branch that kind of didn't bear too much fruit and was more just Noriega was playable for a bit. Lou Williams obviously won the sixth man, but we'll go into a couple issues down below and stuff, right? So then that was the year he drafted Bruno Caboclo and we gave him 4 years, 7 mil. We picked up also James Johnson, which is decent from three, and he's 2 years, 5 million. Well, Caboclo was more of like a project for later. I don't think I need to mention too much about him right now. I think more James Johnson, Lucas Noriega to 4 and 8.5 million. So we have a bit of a different roster. So like I think this is where we see the signals, right? He's trying to shore up some of the weaknesses we had last year. Just bringing in the next talent too, like no 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 no. Yeah, I'm trying to get that started. We're trying to get that to Jack, so if somebody knows a way. But and then we picked up like Otto Porter, right? And we picked up like whatever. Another younger guy, well, similar like a Chris Boucher kind of re-signing. You know what I mean? He's a different role now, similar to Noriega role. So it's an interesting roster, and I think if we look through it, we can see we still had Amir Johnson, we still had Kyle Lowry, we still had Patrick Patterson, Terrence Ross, Jonas Valentunis, Gravis Vasquez, but now we had Lou Williams, and we added Lucas Noriega, James Johnson, obviously, yeah, and Bruno Caboclo. So and then we had a couple extra guys. Tyler Hansbrough, Landry Fields was on the team last year, I'm pretty sure. So like the not too many changes, like fairly a chunk of the same team, but we look to upgrade some of our weaknesses and go into the season. So we came off that 7 game series of Brooklyn in the summer and preseason and all that and came out on fire where we got actually Kyle Lowry into the All-Star game with well, I think DeMar got hurt early in the season, so we were still even cooking hard, right? But then the All-Star game hit, and I think we hit that wall that we're talking about. Where after your first breakthrough, you get solved. Like the coaches had a week to solve what Toronto was doing now, and now that they seem like more of a threat and not a surprise, coaches are preparing for them, right? So, but I also think there's also a component of managing the season, right? So we were talking about that earlier, load managing Fred VanVleet out of the gate. I think obviously at the end of this season, Kyle Lowry really committed to changing his body, and that's when we got slim Kyle Lowry, the better Kyle Lowry, the championship Kyle Lowry that we got. So I think this season was important for that. But I think if you can see this setback, I think we came out of the All-Star break a little drained. I think the momentum kind of died off. We got solved a bit. Our defense wasn't doing much, right? And we went into the playoffs actually looking like that's not how you want to do it, right? You want to get hot coming into the playoffs, not get cold into the playoffs, right? Even though we have a similar record, a better one than last year, right? Here, the last year being 2013-14, right? Where we had 48 wins. So we got one win more, but the momentum coming into the playoffs was completely different, and you can see the result was completely different. We got swept by the Wizards, I think. So you see how there's a step back sometimes when there's a first breakthrough. Like sometimes you don't know exactly what the team needs. And I think that's where this whole summer was dedicated to kind of getting past this part, getting past this wall right here, right? Getting to the point where we're evolved enough where we're a completely different team coming back into the next season. So we'll gonna have this, but we won't drop off after that because we'll have more tools in the bag, more variety, more development, more better players, a better rounded roster, right? And I think it's really interesting to maybe hold expectations for this year because it could be a step back year. But I think going through this the first time, I think Messiah is really keyed in on some of the points that we figured out that we didn't achieve in this season, right? So I think that was a big key component to the Rico runs. And bringing back a bunch of same guys similar to this first plan, because that's always his plan, right? And we're gonna go into the next year and kind of do a flip reverse of the good scenario, but I want to still continue with this season because I think it's important to learn. If we don't learn from the past, we're doomed to repeat it, right? So I think ultimately we know what happened, but I think the team we have now is better built on defense, and this one was more of a like an offensive gunning team. Like Amir Johnson was more of just an offensive piece. Jonas Valentunis more offensive, right? Like DeMar DeRozan more offensive. Lou Williams way more offensive and less defense, right? And Kyle Lowry kind of both a bit, James Johnson a both kind of a bit, Chuck Hayes defense. So I think Masai realized, I think, that he needed more defense. So if we go to the next kind of year here where he kind of fixes what happened in this back step. So there's a lot of changes made in the summer of 2015, right? And I think I want to focus on these because this was the team that actually did what we're trying to do this year, a deep playoff run. Maybe go to the East Conference. I think second round's probably good enough where if we can win a series and kind of experience the upgrade in talent to the next level, we can kind of prepare more in the next year to kind of actually push to go to that next piece, right? And have that third breakthrough and maybe get in that place where we win a championship. But obviously, it's stepping stones, right? Stepping up, 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 and up, right? So it's interesting that we didn't re-sign six man of the year Lou Williams, but I think his defense, obviously. But even though we traded for him, I think he was coming off an injury, so it was more like a rehab season, rebuild his image. So then he went out and signed a contract, like a bigger one than we were going to sign him. And I don't even think Masai offered him a contract. I don't know, pretty sure. But he wasn't what we needed, right? We had too much offense, not enough defense. So we let Amir Johnson go. We didn't re-sign Chuck Hayes, Tyler Hansbrough, Landry Fields, Greg Stigmas, and I think those just yeah, they weren't really working right. We usually go through a couple of these guys each year. Like we try guys and see if they work. And I think that's where we had to sacrifice a great bench piece to kind of build up for the future, but also now too, right? So I think the strategy was replace a good guard and get in two younger, better guards, right? Powell, and we also drafted DeLon Wright that year. And the first eventually became OG. We went through this in the OG trade tree video, right? So let's look at the how Masai actually fixed the roster. So he signed Bismack Biyombo to 2 years, 5.75 million. And the second year was a player option. So obviously he did great this year. Was really big in the Eastern Conference Finals and play against LeBron and stuff. So he declined his player option and signed a massive contract with the Magic, right? And Kyle Lowry made him look great. And we remember him. He was a fan favorite, obviously. Bismack Biyombo is my father. That was like the best sign ever, I swear. And we signed DeMar Carroll for 4 years, 58 million to kind of replace Amir Johnson, right? But I think they also learned a lesson from this one, and he ended up being dumped the next year, which is interesting. And then we made another trade for another African big man, which I'll leave there. That's another video for another time, right? We got Corey Joseph, but uh, DeMar Carroll was defense, right? Defense, defense. We're looking at Corey Joseph, Canadian boy, bring him back home. I think we needed a different like pride, a different edge, like that worn outness that we needed a guy to really keep the energy up. And I think Corey Joseph champion, like former Spur, great character guy, right? And I think he helped the locker room quite a bit that year. So I think he's more similar to the Otto Porter, but obviously we got Otto Porter for 1 year, but it's a similar kind of trade up, like, right? And we got Luis Scola, a little bit more defense. He actually started in the Eastern Conference Finals with DeMar Carroll and Bismack Biyombo. So the three guys that we signed were actually our starting front court for the Eastern Conference Finals, where we took 2 games from Braun before he did his greatest feat ever and beat like the 72 Warriors, right? And we also that year drafted DeLon Wright to kind of replace Grievous Vasquez. And we also picked up Powell, a shooting guard. So we had a young point guard and a young shooting guard. We signed both of them, decent contracts. But then we also re-signed Jonas Valentunis to an extension where he was a piece of the championship team. So you can see the kind of direction that Masai took us in after that season and how it kind of went good for us after that, obviously. Well, not the two sweeps, but the championship, right? This is he had another two setbacks with the two sweeps, obviously, but I think ultimately we learned lessons from that. We learned lessons from 2004, 2015 season where we got swept by the Wizards. And I think it's really important to understand that the process we're at each time we go through it, we refine it and make it better. But sometimes we're not able to replicate certain things from the old process, right? Like we brought in Malachi Flynn. We thought maybe if we give him the same plan as Fred Van Vliet, he might become like a better Van Vliet. Didn't kind of work out that way just yet. Maybe it will. Who knows? But so I think there's also like missteps in the new direction of the plan and refining it even more after a certain point, right? So it's all about learning through these mistakes. And so next time we don't have a 2014-15 season and we go directly to the 15-16 season, right? Where we go to the Eastern Conference Finals. There is no step back from the Brooklyn series where we go 7, right? And I think that's been the motivation of the whole team this summer to kind of push in that direction. Obviously, we're built more similar defensive based in a lot of the changes that he made already. So I think it's just about learning different things and becoming more variable, like less Pascal ISO, get OG ISO more, get Scotty at the top of the key running 5 out like Gasol used to do with slashers and stuff, and let him work his no look magic, you know what I mean? So we have three different kind of play sets where we have like a 4 out, 1 in with Pascal ISOing driving right, and then he can pass off to a valve man or hit an open shooter or whatever, right? And then we want to get OG similar to the way Kawhi was playing. Obviously, he won't have the same kind of abilities as Kawhi on the offensive end, but I think ultimately, if he plays a similar style and is able to get similar buckets, we could have a really diverse three-headed like tandem offense, right? So I think that's what we're trying to tinker now. I think the moves in the offseason were great. I think this was originally his plan. He doesn't like to make a whole roster shift like this because I think it really changes things. But after a disappointment, you have to kind of make changes. If if you realize things aren't right, right? So I think this season is very telling. There's a lot of players in flux, whether they'll be with us long term. I think this season really will determine everyone's kind of long term future with us because this is last year was kind of free money. We weren't expecting to do so well, but this year Masai's made certain trades. He sent certain signals to the team that, hey, we're looking to compete now. We're looking to get deep in the playoffs and start building up to become a championship caliber team. And that's the road, the championship road we're on. And I think that's always going to be the plan. So, so some housekeeping now. I listened to my recordings and did all the editing and stuff. A couple audio typos. I'm sorry about that. Kind of butchered Amir Johnson's name the first time and stuff. Sorry about that. I think when I get more proficient with the editing software, I'll be able to like edit things and quickly record if there's any issues. But this time, I think it's just going to take too long at this point to really record it, edit it, and do all this and the thumbnails. And like, I'm trying to eventually become more efficient, but still spend the same time, right? It's taking a couple hours, you know what I mean? Research, all that kind of stuff. I'm always thinking about it too. So, but I enjoy it. I find it fun. Obviously, other creators find it fun, maybe too. I don't know. But I think I believe in a lot of things. Well, I believe in everything I'm pretty much saying. So I think ultimately I think I want to make my videos more like a timeless kind of feeling, like the information can always be valid. You can always kind of look back and see like a almost like a documentary style kind of a flash in time where they kind of explain the past of something and kind of explain the current and what connects to the now, but then ask a question. So I'm going to end off with a question and say, is it, are we looking, is that next year, are we looking at 2014, 15, or are we looking at 2015, 16? I hope it's the latter because obviously it would be great. We went from this moment, I want to put it up here, at Brooklyn, still, because I love, that was a great season. I love that season. That season really got things started. Jurassic Park, right? Northern Uprising, you know. And the other great season, which in the middle, there's obviously the bad sandwich, the step back, but then we had another great season with Biombo is my father. And still, I'll add still to both because I think it's always important to look in the past and remember and kind of learn from the mistakes that we've made and kind of move forward and always just kind of refine and get better, right? We're looking to get better. Everyone's looking to get better. Masai's looking to get better in the direction that he chooses, in the decisions he makes, the draft picks he makes. Like Bruno Caboclo is a completely different player than no, 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 no. Right? So, like, it's about learning from your previous mistakes and making better ones. And I think we're at a point where we have such a large sample size of past of mistakes and kind of learning through them, right? And so it's really interesting. I want to maybe do this every year and maybe look back and see where we can kind of see similar kind of timeline and maybe look forward to some of the pitfalls and maybe l- go into a deeper dive on what the summer really meant and what the plan really was. And it adds more context to the summer and off season. Obviously, there's a bunch of videos done. I think a bunch of timeless videos like the Raptors developing value or kind of timeless videos, so you can always listen back to those. The expansion or extension series, all those videos, poor in audio quality, but still valid in information because we still have to sign them all next summer. So these videos are kind of the extension series, valid till the next extension series, and I think developing value is a timeless kind of series. And I just wanted, if you are interested in seeing more and maybe listening to less of the extra and want to get just to the meaty parts, you can go and see the different playlists. I kind of labeled out the timeless videos, developing value videos, the extension series videos, and then all the videos I've kind of mentioned connectively in the web of all my videos in one playlist. I'll kind of probably cut that into a season piece, right? So I just want to thank everyone for all the support. And if you want to come and have a great Raptors conversation, uh, Raptors Freak Lex usually doing his stream at 9:30. All the bunch of the regular Raptor people come in, talk about the game the night before, preview the game before, some jokes, some laughs, talk about whatever, you know what I mean? It's a fun time. I want to thank everyone from there and all the other communities. I want to thank everyone that's really supported me and all the creators that kind of gave me advice. I want to continue this grind. We're at 65 subs at the moment of this recording, and I know hopefully we'll get some more. So, Mike G out, Logical Raptors Fanatic, mic drop.